The first Gangland-style murder trial in Atlantic City since casino gambling is running into snags. Published reports say the prosecution's star witness has changed his mind and doesn't want to testify. The witness, Earl DeVault, had earlier testified to seeing a local tailor, Giuseppe Leva, lying dead on a dirt road in Egg Harbor. That was in July in 1977. DeVault had identified Philip "Crazy Phil" Leonetti as the man standing over Leva's body with a pistol. But DeVault has reportedly now changed his story and says he can't identify the man he'd seen with the body. Leonetti is said to be the nephew of an associate of reputed Philadelphia Mafia leader Angelo Bruno.
8 men were indicted last May for conspiracy, extortion, and murder. The defendants include Ruggiero Boiardo, also known as Richie the Boot, who prosecutors say is linked to the Genovese crime family. None of the defendants was in court today as the first of about 50 hours of recorded conversations was played. Today's tapes were actually pretty mild, with no obvious incriminating statements. A police informant had been rigged with a hidden tape recorder, and then he talked to people to whom he owed money. In one conversation played in court today, we heard another man say this to the informant: "If you can't meet these obligations, meaning the debts, I don't want to see nothing happen to you. If you can't make these obligations, forget about it. I can't help you." Now, that statement could be interpreted as a threat, but somebody else, like a defense lawyer, could also call it friendly advice. Prosecutor Michael Brown said the statement was made by Anthony Little Pussy Russo, who was killed in a Gangland-style shooting earlier this year. Brown hopes to prove that some of the defendants who worked for Russo committed illegal acts. The state says that tapes yet to be played will show that an organized crime network involved in loan sharking, gambling, and murder operates in New Jersey. For the third day in a row, defense lawyers argued strongly that the tapes should not be played with news reporters present. They say such an open display of prosecution material will make it harder for the defendants to get a fair trial. So far, Superior Court Judge Michael Imbriani has overruled those objections, but the defense lawyers say they haven't given up yet. And the 8 men are not on trial yet. The tape playings are part of a pre-trial hearing which should last several weeks. The trial itself will probably begin in March. I'm Steve Taylor.
Law enforcement officials today were still trying to determine the motives for the Gangland-style slaying of 2 Essex County mob figures. The bullet-riddled bodies of 67-year-old Antonio "Tony Bananas" Caponigro of Short Hills and Alfred Salerno, 64, of Verona, were both found April 18th in the South Bronx. But authorities only identified their bodies yesterday after fingerprint analysis. Caponigro was thought to be the head of gambling and loan sharking operations along the North Jersey waterfront. His body was found in a trunk of a stolen car, riddled with bullets and stab wounds and littered with $20 bills. Salerno, his hands and feet tied behind him, was shot several times. His body was found in another section of the South Bronx. To play its organized crime tapes today for a Superior Court judge in Somerset County. Those tapes allegedly link several reputed mob figures to a scheme of extortion, conspiracy, and murder. Reg Wells has more.
For 3 days, Judge Michael Imbriani has been listening to audio tape recordings that are part of the prosecution's case against 8 alleged mafia leaders. At stake in this pretrial hearing, whether or not the tapes can be played for a jury in March, in what has been billed as the Great Mob Trial. The case revolves around Ruggiero "Richie the Boot" Boiardo, who, from this rarely photographed mansion in Livingston, is said to have presided over an organized crime kingdom, allegedly dealing in murder, extortion, conspiracy, and gambling. Prosecutors say Boiardo and the 7 co-defendants were part of the New Jersey arm of the Vito Genovese crime family. An arm of the organization Boiardo is said to have run, and prosecutors say they have proof on tape. Judge Michael Imbriani has agreed to listen to more than 60 hours of bugged conversations that allegedly took place between Boiardo and several other reputed mob figures in New Jersey. And the state contends that these tape recordings will clearly prove that the mob is well established in this state. The judge heard conversations that allegedly took place between Boiardo and several other alleged mobsters, where Boiardo claimed to be the boss of the New Jersey underworld. There's also a tape recording in which several alleged mobsters gleefully brag about breaking the arms of people who were late with extortion payments. It will take at least 3 weeks to play all the recordings. The actual trial begins in March, and sometime before the trial begins, defense attorneys are expected to challenge the admissibility of the tapes, claiming they're irrelevant and prejudicial. If they are allowed at the trial and the 8 defendants are convicted, they could spend the rest of their lives in jail. At the Somerset County Courthouse in Somerville, I'm Reg Wells.
Trailways Bus Company, fighting to keep Atlantic City casinos out of the bus business, brought some big guns today to a hearing before a casino control commissioner. The 2-day hearing is not an adversary proceeding. It's a chance for Casino Control Commissioner Madeline McWhinney to gather some facts about casinos owning and operating their own buses to bring in gamblers. But Trailways brought in an organized crime expert who contends that if casino patrons arrive exclusively on casino buses, it will be a temptation for organized crime. Weapons, he said, would be the mob's weapon in this situation.
If the casino dominated its own patron supply, and that was susceptible to organization by, for example, the Teamsters, that Teamster union would have the same kind of stranglehold over the lifeblood of the casino, that is, its economic flow of patrons and therefore cash, comparable to the kind of control that the ILA, International Longshoremen, has over shipping, comparable to the kind of control over the Teamsters having over the transportation of meat.
The Golden Nugget Casino will present its side of the latest bus war tomorrow. It is expected to say there's nothing in the Casino Act that prevents them from busing in their customers in their own buses.
Organized crime in the United States has been damaged but not destroyed. The head of the FBI told Congress today. William Sessions told a Senate subcommittee hearing the ability of La Cosa Nostra or Mafia forces to influence the business and political communities has been weakened. He attributed some of the success to cooperation from former organized crime figures. Such a man told the committee today he left because the old code of honor was destroyed by money, drugs, and greed. He testified in Italian through a translator. He was hidden from public view by a screen.
The mafiosi are not romantic figures like you see in the movies. These people are men of violence, men who let gross amounts of money rule their actions. Until the public really understands the true nature of the Cosa Nostra, its power and its violence will continue. I think there's only one way to overcome the Cosa Nostra, and that is to educate people, to let them know what these men are really like and how dangerous they are to a civilized society.
Today's hearings were the first of a series to be held this spring on organized crime. They coincide with the 25th anniversary of Joe Valachi's star witness testimony before another Senate committee. Valachi was the first mob figure to go public with information about its operations.
Retired Mafia leader Joseph Bonanno was sent to jail today by a federal judge after he repeatedly refused to answer questions about organized crime in New York. The 80-year-old Bonanno had been ordered to give testimony to government lawyers who traveled to Tucson, Arizona to talk with him. But he pleaded ill health and would answer no questions at all. Bonanno has previously given information about his activities to federal prosecutors, but he said today his doctors told him he could die if he testified. His doctors have said he was in danger of a stroke or a fatal heart attack.
In the fight against organized crime, Attorney General William French Smith said today that 25 to 30 more alleged mafia figures will be arrested in this country as the result of an investigation in Italy. Excuse me. Italian police arrested more than 60 people last weekend and took out warrants for more than 300 others. Smith said at least 25 to 30 of those will be arrested in the United States. The Attorney General declared it would amount to the most devastating assault on the mafia in its history. Here in New York, a 17-month trial ended today with the conviction of 18 men known as the so-called Pizza Connection. One of the defendants, Gaetano Badalamenti, is reputed to be the former head of the Sicilian Mafia. The trial began in September 1985, and since then, one former defendant was found murdered, and a second was shot and seriously wounded on a crowded New York City street. Prosecutors had charged the defendants with using pizzerias in the Northeast and Midwest to import and distribute $1.6 billion worth of heroin.
Police in Italy today launched a major crackdown against the Mafia. Scores of arrests were made from Sicily to Milan. Vera Frankel of Worldwide Television News narrates this report.
The police net was cast on Monday night from Caltanissetta in the heart of Sicily. It spread across the island and into parts of northern Italy and Tuscany, 2,000 police acting on more than 200 warrants. Remote areas were also targeted in one of Italy's biggest crackdowns on organized crime. Codenamed Operation Leopard, it was set up to uncover spots of mafia resistance. Police made dozens of raids during the night, and by midday had arrested 75 suspects and served a similar number of warrants on people already in jail. The mafia towns of Agrigento and Gela in the south of Sicily were hardest hit. Only 40 suspects are still free. Among those arrested were 3 members of the Rome Parliament, several local politicians, building contractors, and a criminal lawyer. All those being held have been charged with mafia-related crimes. However, police say individual charges will include murder, fraud, drug trafficking, and election rigging. More than 100 others have been warned they're being investigated. Police got their information from 2 former mafiosi who turned state evidence. In Sicily and across the country, authorities are now preparing themselves for possible reprisal attacks. The mafia has a reputation for taking violent vengeance.
Italy deployed troops in Sicily today and transferred more than 100 jailed mafia bosses to top security jails. The precautions followed the assassination of a mafia prosecutor and 5 police guards in Palermo yesterday. They were killed when a car carrying some 80 pounds of explosives blew up outside a building where the prosecutor's mother lived. A similar bombing killed an Italian police chief 2 months ago.
More than 150 people have been arrested for alleged involvement in an 8-nation drug ring. U.S. and Italian officials made the announcement today. They said the Italian Mafia and Colombian cocaine cartels were behind the operation. Most of the arrests were made in the United States in the past 3 days. Officials said more than $44 million in assets and 529 kilograms of cocaine were seized.